I'm here for the history. Tucked away in a tiny corner of the American Northeast, Massachusetts is the oldest of the 6 states that make up New England. It's surprising just how reminiscent of Old England the new one is, with the added seasonal plus of a show of vibrant colour every autumn or fall. After history, this is the big crowd pleaser. Boston is the commercial and cultural capital of the region, and it may have been around for going on 400 years and have reinvented itself as a trendy little place to live in, but it's the American War of Independence that put it on the map. In the heart of the city, there's Boston Common, America's oldest public park. During the War of Independence, the British camped here, and it's a good starting point for a trip back in time. The city's made navigating its past really easy. Stretching for 2.5 miles from the Common to Charlestown Navy Yard is a thin red line in the pavement called the Freedom Trail. Follow it, and you will literally stumble across all of Boston's major historic landmarks. It can be confusing for the historical novice, as the sites come thick and fast, they aren't chronological, and like the Massachusetts State House, they didn't all play a part in the battle for independence. That's not true of the old State House, however, where the British fired on a mob, killing 5 in what was celebrated as the Boston Massacre. In fact, by the time you reach Faneuil Hall, you realize this town must have been a real pain in the butt for the Brits. If anywhere can be said to have revved up the revolution, then it's this place. It was the town meetings held here that brought to a halt Britain's attempts to tax the colonies. The Stamp Acts and Townshend Acts were all successfully challenged here, and it was here the locals came up with the idea for the Boston Tea Party, the unceremonial dumping of £10,000 worth of British tea in Boston Harbour. This is the home of America's #1 revolutionary hero after Washington, Paul Revere. The house is pretty unremarkable, though admittedly it's the oldest one in Boston. The trail eventually leads to Bunkers Hill across the bay in Charlestown. The Battle of Bunkers Hill was the first major military engagement of the Revolutionary War. And the first thing you learn about it is that it didn't happen on Bunkers Hill, it actually happened on the next hill along, on Breed's Hill. You can gen up on it all at the Bunker Hill Visitors Centre. Not that impressive, but what it lacks in 21st century finesse is more than made up for by the knowledgeable staff. A deep breath and the trail finally grinds to a halt at Charlestown Navy Yard, now a naval museum and home to the USS Constitution, otherwise known as Old Ironsides, for her performance in the War of 1812, when British shots apparently bounced off her sides. If you're not into history, well, your visit to Boston won't be ruined, but you will miss out on what makes this place so important. This is the American Mecca, and I use that term quite precisely. It's the ancestral home of America's past, and at least once in their lives, every American aspires to make the pilgrimage here. Well, they definitely aspire to come here. This is Beacon Hill, the prime loin of Boston real estate, and thus it ever was, until the mid-19th century. Now, here's a mystery. If you compare a map of modern Boston with an 18th century map of the city, there's an anomaly. That skinny-necked peninsula the British barricaded during the American War of Independence has somehow disappeared. There's a lot more land around. Well, what happened was, in the 19th century, the city fathers instituted a huge land reclamation scheme, one of the results of which was this area, the Back Bay. The rich started moving in here, and it's never looked back. The shops on Newbury Street just reek of dosh. Nowadays, this is the place to have a pied-à-terre. Carly Simon and Ted Kennedy are just a few of the locals. There are a couple of other big names in this area that are hard to miss. The John Hancock Tower has the uncanny knack of changing shape depending on your vantage point. Opposite is its older neighbor, the Prudential Tower. Never popular, the Pru, as it's called, offers the visitor one major attraction, the Skywalk viewing platform. Ugly the building may be, but if you're lucky with the weather, the views are fantastic. Just bear in mind that in the wake of September the 11th, you'll need photo ID to get up here. The Pru is an office-cum-shopping mall combo, so there's also the chance to poke around the shops as you leave. The area that gets the thumbs up in the shopping sections of the guidebooks is around Fernale Hall and Quincy Market, which is a bit of a shame. This is shopping for tourists. Quincy Market, once the Massachusetts wholesale emporium, is now a fantastic pit stop for tired shoppers to refuel in. It's a multinational takeaway that will leave you dazed and confused. Just be prepared for a lot of rough and tumble at lunchtime. The locals shop at Downtown Crossing, Boston's mainstream retail drag, a tumble of chain stores with a little treasure twinkling in the middle. Filene's Basement's the one to head for if you've ever had a yen for cut-price designer clothing. They're all bargains to begin with, but the deal is the longer something sits on the shelf, the cheaper it gets, so you could end up paying as little as 25% of the original price. You have to be something of a dedicated shopper, though, and be willing to rummage. Not really my scene, and I have to say, not a patch on the New York designer equivalent Century City. It's hard to reconcile the shining Ally McBeal skyline scene from Boston Harbor with the grimy industrial reality that characterized the city's waterfront as recently as 20 years ago. Where hoodlums used to dump bodies, you can dump the kids for some educational entertainment. Nowadays, aquariums are 10 a penny, and in my opinion, we should exercise a little discretion when choosing which ones to visit and which ones to avoid. This is Boston's fish tank, interestingly positioned across the road from Legal Seafoods, and I've been told it's one of America's best. We shall see. Kay is not the best aquarium I've ever visited. Barcelona's, for example, and Monterey's in California are much better, but it is one of the few attractions in the city the kids are going to get a real kick out of. Or you could hop on a harbor cruise. The emphasis here is on, you guessed it, history. But there's just something about a boat trip that brings out the kid in all of us. I've been on some good boat trips, and I've also